that is really the turning point in player empowerment. However, he was a free agent. He didn't demand a trade. Like, there's a difference. So again, LeBron, Jordan, Kobe, Bird, Shaq. Again, these are 5 of the best players to ever live. We now live in an era where Ben Simmons will sit out a year, where Anthony Davis, who controversially is a top 75 player of all time, James Harden, who in my opinion is barely a top 50 player of all time, the Carmelo Anthony, guys who are not in that league are going to demand trades and hold a franchise hostage.
As far as just ruining player empowerment, your list is it. So like, I'm with that. So like AD, I agree with you with the missing games. So I'm going to go AD, Kyrie, and then Harden.
Hey everyone, we're back on Raw Sports Debate. I am your host, Michael Steven, and I have a special featured guest today, Steve Adamson. Welcome, Steve. First thing I'm going to say, Steve, is where do you think player empowerment started in the NBA? I mean, we're here in 2022, but where did that term, how did we get where we are right now?
Right. Like everything else, and again, I think you might have to add to this because it's going to land somewhere and we're going to start coming up with this as we go a little bit. But I almost think this is circumstantial and it was seen coming. And the term is after it was already snowballing. So blank or at first in a vacuum, you're going to go the decision. But is that really it? I think you might be able to go back to the fight between Jordan and Jerry Krause. Or you could go back to Celtics and bird rights. But that was more for the team to retain a player. But still, that's where you start at. Because now you're bringing the player into the conversation.
Right. Yeah, it's nuanced. So, yeah, what was the bird rights about?
The bird rights, now, as a whole, it was just a matter of the NBA was making more money. Other teams, the salary cap now makes it where players are worth more than you could actually pay within the system. So now you make it where if you draft a player or if you have a player on your team that you've contracted for, I think 2, but I think it's 3 or more years, you now have earned bird rights over them. And it's actually an asset that can be tagged onto a player for a trade. So you could essentially have bird rights on somebody, trade the player and the rights. Like if somebody wanted that player long term, or if it was to be done as a sign and trade, which plays into the Supermax now. But the Supermax, I think, is where the problem is starting to lie that nobody saw coming. But to go to the beginning, everybody's going to say, well, LeBron did it. He's super teams going to the Heat, the decision. I mean, who goes on TV to do that? That's like the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen.
Well, that was the most outlandish example. And that wasn't even, now in retrospect, he didn't even force a trade. He was a free agent who stuck it out with a team that didn't do a good job of building around him. And he just left. But, going back to, I understand the bird rights, but then you got MJ and Krause. Even that, he only inked a couple of one-year deals because I know they had a very contentious relationship for a variety of reasons. But, Krause wanted the credit. He was an insecure dude. He did do a great job, but Jordan was the GOAT. So I understood why that happened. But at the end of the day, he just wanted – Jordan only made – I think he signed like a $33 million contract each of his last 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And – it's irony now that I think about it out loud. Didn't LeBron sign for half of that after his decision? I know it was Miami with no income tax, but you talk about a league going in the wrong direction over a decade. Wait, aren't you supposed to make more money?
Yeah, I told you this was going to slide all over the place.
Yeah. So where do you think the Jordan Krause, how do you think that fits into this overall equation?
So like I said, I think some of it is circumstantial. And you start seeing it get circumstantial with owners being able to manage their players through bird rights. But like you said, the nuance of that is you have a player sitting at the table now with the owners. This is my lead dog. Like I sit with the owners and say, hey, is this the guy we're going to go all in for? Because we can do this. Because before you just had to let him go. That's what was going to happen. And they saw that coming, curbed it, which it did help. Because think about it. As the league progressed, you only had the major market cities winning games. Golden State, Philadelphia, LA, not even Chicago. Chicago, like, look at what Jordan said when he got there. People were partying, doing drugs, hanging out in hotels, doing nothing. Only half, not even half the teams, because back then there was more than 8 teams at this point. But like at some point, there was really only 4 professional teams and a bunch of paid players on teams when you really think about it. Some people were going to practice every day, going to bed early. Some people were partying every night with their paychecks. You know what I like? That's just how it was. So with that being said, you have this dynamic where outside of player empowerment and dealing with the salaries, you have this whole hoorah people on trying to project the future. You have a whole bunch of money people projecting the reality. And then you have the middle ground, which is the argument where you ultimately land. And I think Jordan pushed the envelope to get the bird rights and ultimately get to super maxes. But I think the hoorah section and looking for the next Jordan, because I'll give you an example. Remember the Iverson draft? Everybody was looking for Jordan, but like we were acting like Steve Francis is better than he had more clout at that time than Luka did walking in the league. But how much sense does that make? But we were just fishing for Jordan. And I think all that hoorah, and then you have Kobe coming in and you have all these little things happening where you see all these superstar things going on. Everybody got too excited. And you add in the analytics at the top, and now I'm jumping back to comeback, but you have the analytics at the top. Now the hoorah and the analytics all of a sudden are combining in and having people overrated and thinking a system can work above trying to just manage humans. Like there is no way to corral humans that systematically. So that's where I think the super max starts causing a problem, because in reality, by definition, it was for players like Jordan. But think about what I just said. Players like Jordan. Is there really another one?
No. So it basically, and that's what I was thinking. I was thinking that too. It's like, wait, Jordan was at the table, but he's Jordan.
Yeah.
Then
Bird was at the table. He was Bird.
Yeah, Bird, LeBron. We're talking 3 of the best 10 players by any stretch ever. So that's, and then I think other players thought they were entitled to it, which I know we're going to get to later as we transition to 2022. But yeah, it's like the fact that that's MJ. He should have that, right? But then we were so busy looking for the next MJ, and all these players. That was like that's when it started, and a lot of like that whole era there, like post Jordan. Also, coincidentally, when a lot of people kind of stopped watching the NBA. I don't know. That's another conversation.
Correct, because there was a down year. I didn't even bring that up, but you are correct. It did go like this, then like this, then like this, but it wasn't back to Jordan yet.
Right.
It was more like a dip. Then Iverson and that, because that draft class was one of the best draft classes ever without having, did they have a top 10 player?
I forget.
Duncan. Was Duncan in that one? No, that was way earlier. Yeah. Ray Allen?
I forget the drafts off the top of my head.
But that draft was stacked. But at the end of the day, I think what you're going, like you're seeing it now. So like, look at Russell Westbrook, right? Like, oh, well, maybe a team can eat his contract and it's somebody who can just sell tickets and tank at the same time. But it's like, do you not hear what you just said? The Supermax as a whole, by definition, was just like, when it came out, I was like, that's genius. The small teams can play into it. But we didn't factor in there was a trend of sign and trades going up before the Supermax. So the Supermax just escalated a pre-existing problem we didn't acknowledge and should have saw coming. So now you set up a system that sets up small market cities to just sell tickets. or sell tickets for 2 years and then end up like Brooklyn right now, where you have a guy on a 4-year contract saying, I want to be traded. You've never seen that before. 4 years on a deal, I want to be traded. You're a top 3 player in the league, arguably.
Yeah, and so let's backtrack a second. We'll get back there. So another guy, you brought him up, and I was actually thinking about him right before, was Kobe. Now, again, another top 10 player of all time. Unless I'm in a hating mood, then I'll put him 12 or something. But another top 10 player all time. All right. Now, Kobe, he flexed his muscle too. Remember, it was about 2005, 2006. He was frustrated with infamously Smush Parker and some of those guys. And he was demanding to be traded after him and Shaq had gotten into it. Now, why did him and Shaq get into it? Well, they got into it because Kobe was a loner who did his own thing, wasn't a great team guy, didn't pass the ball enough. Shaq was an all-time great, another top 12 player all time who didn't fulfill his best potential because he didn't work hard enough. So they had a natural conflict that reached a boiling point in the 2004 finals. So he eventually wins that, but then he has the stones to say, hey, if you don't get me some guys, I want to be out of here. And then they got Pau Gasol, they swung Odom, and they got that deal. People thought it was a ripoff at the time. It actually was a pretty good deal for the Grizzlies. But bottom line is, Kobe used that. He used his muscle there, and I think that's part of this conversation a little bit. But again, every person I'm bringing up, and I'm doing it for kind of a reason here, is they're all top 12 players of all time. And now we're in an era where, and then you go to the decision, which again got so criticized for a lot of reasons. He was very passive aggressive. He had to play it for the, he had to wait a half hour. He had to wear that weird shirt. He had to do it with Jim Gray. He could have handled it a lot better.
Commercial for it.
And then, yeah. How many more commercials do I have to watch to know where he's going? And he didn't even, Miami's not even South Beach. Like he could have, everything went wrong. However, then he decides to double down and have that like welcome party where he's like, not one, not two, not three, 4. And everybody got all upset. Like, and I was like, yo, it was just some young dudes having fun. Like, he had to deal with Cleveland for 7 years. Like, give the guy a break and Wade's a champion.
That's true, too.
I was actually, and you know this, I rooted for Miami that year. I was so sick of the hate. I was like, yo, I am rooting for Miami.
You became to Miami what I became to LeBron, where people thought I was a fan. And it was like, no, it's just, you got to defend him. Jesus.
Well, at that point, LeBron had won in 7 years. So I was very secure in my Michael Jordan, goathood. So I was okay with, even now, I'm still secure in it. I mean, you can make an argument for LeBron, but, I was like, I'm not going to root against them. But I digress. The point is that is really the turning point in player empowerment. However, he was a free agent. He didn't demand a trade. Like, there's a difference. So again, LeBron, Jordan, Kobe, Bird, Shaq, again, these are 5 of the best players to ever live. We now live in an era where Ben Simmons will sit out a year, where Anthony Davis, who controversially is a top 75 player of all time, James Harden, who in my opinion is barely a top 50 player of all time, the Carmelo Anthony, guys who are not in that league are going to demand trades and hold a franchise hostage. So where did it, in your opinion, did it go wrong? Where did it go from, hey, the owners have too much power and the players are stuck, to, whoa, wait a second here. Now, very good players, not top 10 players in the league, can demand trades?
So you are definitely onto something. Not only the question you asked is a great question, but it's actually layered. So like what I noticed in talking this out is, it started by bringing the player to the table, which was inevitable, bird rights. Where it went wrong, Jordan arguing with Krause. So then it goes to, and side note, we can have another discussion about this and film it. You made a great point for another discussion. Kobe and KD, what you just said is exactly why I don't think KD exactly wants to leave the Nets first. It's about not playing with Kyrie, because I think this is exactly what Kobe did. It's just we live in a more media era where Kobe it got known that he suggested it. This is what I will do. Where Kevin Durant, there never is a will do anymore. It's like that. So it's not a will. It's this is what I said. So this is what we're doing. Mm-hmm. But that's what I think KD is doing to the Nets. This isn't about leaving the Nets first. It's about getting separated from Kyrie first is the top priority. And this is where I'll go if you move me first. He just didn't realize the chess move for the Nets was we have to move Kyrie first to get max value for this whole thing. But separate discussion. Second, Grizzlies. That was a good trade. That was a 3-step process to landing Ja Morant in actuality.
Really?
That team was stacked long enough. Think about it. That team, because of that trade, ended up being to compete for the playoffs. They had a hometown team they loved. They loved Zach Randolph. They loved Marcus Gasol. And they built it up off of the love of the city. So that you bring in a Mike Conley, you bring in these culture guys. They were a culture team for the
Tony
last
Allen.
15 years. Yeah, my favorite defender. 15 years, and nobody knew it. And remember what I've been saying about culture the last fucking 3 months? Oh, sorry.
It's all good, man.
Remember what I was saying about culture the last 3 months? Yeah. They were ahead of the game. Yeah. But that's why they're so solid at the core right now. But separate discussion. Good point, though. But now you get to the overall back to this issue, player empowerment. The overall bad, the snowball that started rolling downhill to make this worse was the decision. But the decision didn't start it. But what makes the decision okay, because it's also the good, is because LeBron owned it. So like you said, you can see who the abusers are, and there's definitely a trend, and you see who LeBron is. But then there's also the circumstantial damage of the trend, which sets up the baseball contracts. Baseball doesn't have a salary cap. The other sports do. But yet they have the backloaded contracts like baseball. So again, I think the salary cap is part of the problem of what's making this worse. And the people that set it up are the owners. So really, they're complaining about it, but they're the foundation piece to why it's so messed up. Because at the end of the day, if you stop making everything about selling tickets first, which, yes, it's important. Everybody needs to sell them. But I mean selling them in comparison to every other city and keeping it relative to money to the league and understanding a dollar goes further in this state than this state, in this city, in this city. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Baseball doesn't have a salary cap, but you know what they do? They share more revenue because the Yankees and Dodgers and the Red Sox know if there's nobody to play, there's no party to have.
Right. Yeah. So I think it's a layered conversation because you got money involved, you got locations involved, and then you got, society involved. So
yeah.
So in 2010 was the decision. And how do we get to here? Yeah, I think it was 2010. Yeah, right? Yeah, because 2009 was against the Celtics. Yeah. So then I got to bring up Chris Paul too, because Chris Paul's not a top 12 player of all time. He's top, in my opinion, 2025, but he demanded a trade from
and didn't get it.
The Hornets. Well, that another one, because that Hornets team was completely dysfunctional because they were a small city. They went from 56 wins and a second round team to 49 wins where he was putting up ridiculous numbers. And then he got hurt the middle of next year. Then they went back, made the playoffs, played Kobe, and then the whole management shifted. They got rid of all their best players because they didn't want to pay them. And then infamously, he gets traded to the Lakers, and then all the owners throw a hissy fit. David Stern sends him to the Clippers, which is hilarious in retrospect. It's like, wow, he really is the most cursed player ever. Could have played with Kobe. Kobe'd probably still be alive, and he'd still be playing right now, him and Chris Paul. And the thing is like that's another part of it, because it's like, wait, in one sense, that showed okay, now we took a step down from the greatest of all great players. Now Chris Paul's doing it. But at the same time, that was a special situation because of the ownership mess and a small city. And at the same time, he got traded and then it got denied and then he went somewhere else. So I can't help but feel like that's some kind of domino in this whole scheme here.
It's funny that you use the word domino because I've been writing stuff down. Yeah. And when you brought up Chris Paul, you know what screwed Chris Paul? No Supermax. I think that was the first domino to the Supermax.
Yeah.
Because if he gets the Supermax, he plays 2 more years in New Orleans, requests the same trade, and then gets there because they can't afford to pay him.
He would have wasted 2 years of his prime, though, which he basically did in the Clippers anyway, but whatever.
But the player empowerment would have gotten to that next step that allows him to make it happen. Where before, because this was weird, that I think is what was scaring the owners, and the owners thought the Supermax was going to save them. And that was the first domino that was starting to scare them. Like, no, what? Like we couldn't keep them. We couldn't keep Chris Paul. Like, we go in the red so fast. Like, what's going on? And then it's like, well, if you give him the Supermax, and in a vacuum, it's like, oh, now the small market team can pay him the most until they ask for a trade. And then they can't sign anybody, and the trade seems reasonable because they literally can't sign anybody else, like the Lakers now.
So what happened after Chris? So you're saying Chris Paul could have maybe signed a Supermax, spent 2 years there, and then
that's what the money was,
and then gone to the Lakers.
Yeah,
Kobe was still kicking, barely.
Because remember, keep it relative to the time.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to, again, make this point too. As soon as the owners start saying in the next CBA and they bring up all the negatives that we're bringing up, no, they did not see that coming. This worst case scenario is not what they feared, okay? They feared something else. But there's parts of this that are worse. There's parts of what they thought that didn't happen that could have made this worse. But is this better than their worst? Not necessarily. It's somewhere in the middle because nobody could foresee everything. But when the owners start talking and saying, this is what we were talking about, my answer to that is shut the you-know-what up. Because that is not what you saw. You're just saying that now. You're just playing a card you didn't know you had. You caught one on the river and you're playing it.
So after Paul, I'm trying to think of other players that, obviously a few years after KD, again, went to the Warriors, which plays into the salary cap point. The Warriors obviously did an amazing job of handling that in order to afford KD.
Right.
That's one aspect of it. Probably they hadn't paid Curry yet.
No, but it's not just that. They got everybody else paid to leave to free up the space. It's not like if you have a shot at KD, like to keep it relative, you have a shot at KD. If you have a shot at KD, you are now overpaying Harrison Barnes. If you don't have a shot at KD, Harrison Barnes was worth that money. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's a little different.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but then, I'm just going to fast forward to today. So it seems like a slow process from the decision to now. I think it went from LeBron to Paul, Melo, and a few guys that I'm not remembering in that era there. You had KD who left. What guy?
Not one guy, one more variable so I can add this guy.
Yeah.
Injuries messed up the Supermax because I'm pretty sure Derrick Rose got one, didn't he?
Ooh, I forget. But yeah.
So add that in and then poof, Derrick Rose is right there ruining it too just because he got hurt. Destroyed the entire Bulls. Because now you can't readjust anything. You want to keep him because he got you there, but now the bird rights aren't saving you either. Like, what do I do with this guy? Yeah.
And then, we'll fast forward to today and maybe some other guys will come to mind, but I think of 3 guys that have personally that I have said this year that I'm holding the Mount Rushmore of guys who help destroy player empowerment. Actually, I got 4. All right. Hey, I got 5. Anthony Davis, Kyrie Irving, Ben Simmons, and James Harden.
Okay.
So I'll just explain. Well, you can explain Kyrie because I know it's a great passion of yours. But the AD, to me, it was like, hey, listen, AD is an incredibly talented player. We saw that at Kentucky. We saw that in the league. However, he was often injury prone, and he did not make his teammates better on both sides of the court at a level of an elite player. That is why he is a top 5 talent, but he is not what you would call a force multiplier like Luka. He helps. He has great interior defense, but he's not Tim Duncan on defense, and he's not an offensive wizard who like anywhere close to like LeBron. So he's an individual player. He'd be an amazing tennis player. You know, he'd be a top 10 tennis player of all time. You know? So basically to demand a trade the way he did, I didn't think was appropriate. Because again, I understand there's be debate about this, but he's not Chris Paul level of player. So what Chris Paul did with New Orleans, it's not the same as what AD did. So that was first off with AD. And then I'm going to say Harden, we both know, you know, my favorite player is Chris Paul. Your favorite player is Russell Westbrook. So we both, we intricately rooted for Harden for a couple of years there, and we know what went on. That was difficult, man. that helped with the bias part of the conversation. So we knew that James Harden had too much power in Houston. Me and you had conversations. We knew what went on and why it didn't work between Paul and Harden. Paul just wanted Harden to move without the ball, and he wouldn't do it. It would have been the best for everybody, but D'Antoni had no power. Daryl Morey is too in love with analytics and James Harden, and and again, very smart guy, but he overdid it with Harden, and therefore Harden just ruled the entire franchise. Then he starts showing up like Shaq out of shape and demands a trade after he pisses off Dwight Howard, who everyone can't stand, so that's okay. We'll give him a mulligan on that. But Dwight Howard, Chris Paul, Russell Westbrook, again, all have their issues as men, but if you're really pissing off grown-ass men like Chris Paul and Russell Westbrook, something's going wrong with you. And then you're going to show up out of shape, and you're going to hold the whole franchise hostage, and you're going to play your way back into shape, and then you're going to go to the Nets and start taking off. Yo, that was some BS, man. I didn't like the way he handled that. I said, hey, nothing against his game. He doesn't move without the ball, but he's an amazing all-time scorer and passer and beard grower. But other than that, it's like he abused his privilege. And then the last guy I'll mention that I'll let you rant is I forgot his name already. Ben Simmons. Well, I don't know exactly what's going on with Ben Simmons and his brain and his back, but I do know that sitting out a full year the way he did, bro, you're not at that level. I mean, me and you would probably beat him in a shooting contest. So I don't want to hear it. So what are your thoughts on that? And you know, Kyrie as well.
So I'm right with you. I had a slightly different list going on. So like, as far as just ruining player empowerment, your list is it. So like, I'm with that. So like AD, I agree with you with the missing games. So I'm going to go AD, Kyrie, and then Harden, just because Kyrie's going to kind of end up on both lists to some extent. But AD and Kyrie both miss games. AD is hurt all the time. Here's my issue with him. He's hurt because of what you said Kobe didn't like about Shaq, but it's worse. Okay? So, and then here's the other thing about what you said that makes me mad about Anthony Davis is you're right. He is a top 5 talent. But here's the thing. He did not make the NBA because of offense. So therefore, you should be the best defender in the league, not Giannis. I saw him win a national championship playing identical to Giannis. And Kentucky was losing in the first half. And then he came out and literally was pitching a shutout, basically. He was not, the only way that ball was going to touch the rim is if you shot a 3. Everything else was getting sent the other way. Like literally, it was one of the best defensive games I've ever seen on any level, period.
I watched it. I loved it.
Like it was insane. That was the only time in my life I saw AD with a motor. Ever.
Maybe like 1 or 2 times in the bubble championship.
But again, that wasn't a motor. That was just a dude in rhythm. Like go to his shot percentages. he wasn't taking the greatest shots. He was just making them. It was a lot of 15-footers, a lot of 19-footers, a lot of threes. Even his three-point percentage should be higher than last year, but he's never going to shoot that high like he did in the bubble. That's like Steph Curry good year.
And not to mention his entitlement with saying, "Oh yeah, the Suns got away with one. We know it, and they know it. We would have beat them."
The way they
it's
talk.
Like get your ring privilege out of here, man.
Exactly.
It's like you're a second banana on a LeBron team, and you had a couple of few great games, and you're a great player. So that also is part of it too. Like there's the mental entitlement.
Exactly, it counts.
Is the same reason why he's acting this way.
Why do you think Bird is in my top 5?
Yeah.
Like he's not getting there without being mentally tough. He's one of the worst uncoordinated athletes I've ever seen. He just runs in straight lines, but he got it done. He hustled his ass off. He does the work. He practices harder. Like I wasn't born faster than you. I'll just run until I am faster than you. I don't care what it looks like.
He was underratedly athletic though, but comparatively speaking.
No, but I mean in straight lines. He just wasn't agile. But as soon as he got up and could roll downhill, it was like LeBron at 37. You know what I mean? Like he's just downhill, and he's a strong dude.
So not only that, AD is like he's got the entitlement, and he's Shaq. So
like to me, if AD's working out like LeBron, who works out like Larry Bird, who works out like Michael Jordan, none of this is an issue.
Right.
So so therefore you don't get brownie points for talent. Right? There's a million people that don't make it to the league. So then you jump to Kyrie. AD actually missed more games, but the fact that Kyrie missed almost as many and wasn't even hurt is a problem. And I'm not even getting to the COVID year. You know what I mean? Because we'll put that to the side. Because again, my only issue with the COVID year is why didn't you just keep leaning into life is more important than basketball? That doesn't mean basketball is not important. Like it can be like how many things like Steph Curry, golf isn't the most important thing to him, but he's a damn good golfer. You know what I mean?
He could have phrased it better. I try to cut him some slack on this issue because I appreciate that he took a stand, and I appreciate that he's a young dude who's, you know, about 10 years younger than us. However, you're right. Before that, he hadn't earned the benefit of the doubt. He was someone even in college. He doesn't have an Anthony Davis, Carmelo Anthony career. He barely played in college. You loved him.
Correct.
Right?
No, 900 games, missed 300.
Yeah.
That's insane. And he wasn't hurt. And take out the COVID year. Yeah. And take out like the games played and games missed from that. It's still the same percentage. Like it's
which gets to your point, and you've made that point before when we were talking that you don't think he's in the adequate shape to be at 100% on both ends of the court for a full season.
He trains just enough to play enough of an 82 game season where you wouldn't notice. For like if he was born, let's say he only plays basketball, hits the weight room a little bit. Like he's like your casual NBA guy, right? Like whatever that means. They're pro players. Like there's nothing casual about it. I just want to make that said because that's the issue. I think when the media gets to and was like nothing casual about pros. Okay. But I think when you have the person that let's say plays and works on his game more on the basketball court than let's say in the weight room running and doing other things. If he was born to be 6'6", 200 pounds plus or minus, the way he works out would be fine. But to be 6'1"-ish and 160 to 180 pounds on any given year, I think requires something he doesn't want to do. Like I always say, and I tell even my players, only KD can play basketball and be a top 10 player all time at basketball because he was born to be 7 feet tall and he's way strong. He's one of them strong, skinny dudes. You know what I mean? He's not weak. No. Okay. And then he moves like a guard, but I got news for you. You can't even teach most 7-footers to move like a guard. They're born that way. So again, I don't think Kyrie is appreciating what he's born into that we knock Steph Curry for and don't lean into the stats enough for him, let's say. But then we'll catapult Kyrie when he hasn't even played enough games to do certain things. So then the other issue I have is, and this is like leading up to, this is why he's on my list of ruining player empowerment. Because again, I'm not going to fault you for the COVID year. But when you come back, your job, and again, this plays into what I'm going to say about Russell Westbrook next, is he's not on the ruining player empowerment thing, but he's on my top 5, just this doesn't make sense thing. And it's, your job was to come back and say, look, that mattered to me if it mattered to you, being COVID. But I am back now. We're going to do this. And even right now, you could still retroactively fix this and do what I'm saying right now. You could say, no, go on Instagram right now. I'm calling KD right now and tell him, no, COVID mattered to me. I missed that year, but we're coming back now and we're going to win this ring. And I'll tell you right now, if the Nets don't give me my 5-year max when we do this for you, I'm out. Sign and trade all day because somebody's giving me the max. And I got news for you, Brooklyn. Kevin ain't staying either if I leave. And I don't care if we play together on the next teams. You do that, problem solved. They're suited and booted in the Nets, and they're in the Eastern Conference Finals. Because again, he talked his way into needing to play this year, just like AD did. And the two of them now not only talk their way in, they can't miss another game. Like right now, if either owner of either team goes in, gives them the finger and says, you're getting on the court right now, whether you like it or not, I got news for you. You and KD ain't going nowhere till the trade deadline. If we suck, you're going somewhere. If he did that right now, what are they going to say? I'm sitting out? It's like, I got news for you. There's only 2 trade partners for you, KD. You're 34. Like, they won't even give up Anthony Edwards for you. If you were 30, maybe.
That's why the Suns might get him, like I predicted. Because he is 34, so maybe they'll give up Bridges in a first rounder and Cam Johnson, and the Nets would be like, hey, we're rebuilding.
No, but to me, it's like, if I'm the only reason I disagree with you, and it has to be when the Nets suck after January 15th, is because that's when they're going to make Ayton come over. Because they know there's a better deal to be had.
I want Ayton
on the 15th.
I want to keep Ayton.
And so that's why I don't see that happening, because the best deal they can get from the Suns is still attainable just with the waiting game. Add in what I just said about the waiting game. It's like, if I'm Sean Marks, I'm going on vacation, bro.
So you remember how the Nets have made dumb decisions in the last decade? Remember that deal for like Paul Pierce and KG? Yeah. You never know, man.
But think about it. Even
that
if
New York, New Jersey
that was
water,
just
bro.
A new team to sell tickets. They wanted to come in hot, so at least they're selling jerseys. But that's AD and Kyrie. Player empowerment done. James Harden abused it, but at the same time, he's trying to make it right. He's the only adult in the room right now. And I agree with
scary thought for our world.
And I agree with everything you say about Houston, every single thing. But again, we had this combo too. You got to remember, he wasn't that lottery pick coming in. He wasn't guaranteed that payday. My only issue was, if he just had the real work ethic, tone the partying down, own it like Jordan and Kobe, and the culture is just a hair different while you're doing all that in Houston. But again, you can't do that when only the player that's a lottery pick does that.
Oh, so what happened was Harden is like that chick or that dude who's like a late bloomer, and he wasn't like the popular, awesome, everyone wanted them in high school and college, and then they got the power and they abused it. So that guy, started breaking hearts and doing whatever. That woman all of a sudden thought she was better than all these women because now she's pretty. That was Harden. Yeah.
Now, exactly. Now you add in the fact that he built that relationship with Morey. It hit the fan in Brooklyn. So now it leads me to believe, leading up to the trade to the Sixers, they knew, like, there was a shake hands deal. Like, look, if we go to the finals, we make it to the Eastern Conference Finals, and you and Embiid are combining for 55 to 70 points a night. Your two are combining for 10 to 15 assists a night, 10 to 20, because you might pull out 20 on your own in any given night. And combined, you're getting 25 to 40 rebounds a night. Yeah, I'll give you the max right now. But if we don't get it, I'll give you we'll figure it out, but I'll let you earn it back. And that's what you're seeing happen. And they grew up together. And that's why this is a business relationship, is what you're seeing. And I think that's why it may work, because again, the part people sleep on with the Sixers is, what if Maxey gets better?
Yeah, hey, Leslie, all playoffs is like, hey, Maxey's the second best player on the Sixers.
So
and I would give him crap, but he was for a while there, you know. But you're right, Maxey's gonna get better.
If Maxey gets 5% better, metaphorically speaking, but I'll put a number to it. Let's say 3% better from 2. I don't know what his 3-point percentage is, but if it's close to 30, let's say it gets closer to 33.5. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then free throws go from, if they're 70, into the 80s. Dude, that's a perennial all-star from his numbers before.
And James Harden has to adjust to the new rules.
So now you have a weaker Kyrie that's plugged in, that literally, because remember his rookie year, I used to tell all the time, like, I love watching this dude play. He looks like he's playing for free. He's just so happy to be there. That's why I'm keen on him becoming, if he plays 15 years, he's going to make 8 All-Star games. That's how good I expect him to be. So with that being said, they might be good. James Harden might be the guy that fixes this and sets a trend. Who knows? But yeah, he's on the list for winning this.
Okay, so hang 2 quick questions. Why did who wanted Harden on the Nets, and why did Harden exit the Nets, in your opinion?
That's the beauty of like that. Again, we can bring that one up too on a side note, but that's the irony of it too. So you mean to tell me KD co-signs ditching LeVert, Jarrett Allen, and a bench that would have beat the Bucks to bring in Harden, just for Harden to come in? He came in out of shape, but he was growing up in front of your eyes while one is still an immature baby, and you sided with the baby. That's why I think if I'm KD, I turn around on Kyrie like, yo, can you just give this statement saying you're going all in for us? You're going to opt into this deal. You're going to be worth more than this deal. The Nets are going to give you this max, or you're out of here, which will lead to me being out of here. But I didn't tell you that. Like, why isn't KD spoon feeding him this? Because you're the one that brought Harden over and then kicked his ass out.
Yeah. I wasn't sure if Kyrie wanted Harden there too. It seemed like he was on board, but I don't remember.
Oh, no. Kyrie was definitely on board. Kyrie saw Harden coming in and was like, as soon as they talked about it, he was...
I can score more.
One of those dramatic irony situations where he was turning around to KD like, now we both can average 30.
I can score more. Exactly.
Again, selfish. He was looking out for himself.
All right, then what were you going to say about Westbrook?
No. And then you go to Ben Simmons.
Okay. Right.
As the last player that ruined player empowerment.
Oh, so we have the same Mount Rushmore. All right. Stunning.
And so, yeah, I'm with you on ruining player empowerment. It's just ultimately James Harden is very much involved in ruining it. It's just at the same time, I'm going to say he's on the other side of that now. Like, he learned better. He's not abusing it now.
Right.
But
Fair.
with like Kyrie though, Westbrook, I was praying to God because I'm his biggest fan. And I even told you during the year, like, yo, why isn't he just saying what he said when he was trying to become an all-star? Like, no, this is me. I know I'm better than this. I'm going to try to do better. I'm going to try to do better, and just own it. Just own it and just try to do better. Try to speak it into existence. Speak it so you want to work harder on your off days. Speak it so you're relaxing more on the off days, or whatever it is you need to do, and just try to manifest it. But it wasn't doing that. And then the season ends. And I'm like, okay, maybe it's like he's going to give the statement like, trade me, don't trade me, just like I was saying about Kyrie. But I'm giving it my all. You're either going to regret it or you're going to love me after this. But either way, you're getting everything I got. I might have to retire after this. That's what I wanted to hear, because that's how you got to this point. So why am I not hearing that?
He hasn't said the right things.
Not at all. Not at all. Like, even right now, him and Kyrie, he could do this right now. Right now, he could just do this. Like, this thing doesn't, it's not like it expired.
Yeah, and it's like, and we know darn well, it's like, you know, on my philosophical points of, I got to make one at every episode, of course. You know, it's like, everyone was trying to figure out whose fault it was that the Lakers won 33 games. And it's like all of them, like AD, Westbrook, or, and whatever. Those are the top two. And then Vogel and the supporting cast. And then LeBron, because LeBron was still putting up 30 a game. But I'm sure LeBron still has his deficiencies as a leader, and he wasn't exactly a great defender.
And again, only basketball purists are saying this, and it's starting to leak into the media now ever since the KD trade was happening, because like the word untradeable is coming up, and like LeBron is like quasi on it, because like it's like he's technically tradable. The only reason he's not tradable is because of the way he controls his own market, but he shouldn't really be able to control that. He should be more than tradable right now, because the untradeable players are Giannis, Luka, and Steph. Mm-hmm. That's it. That is it.
And Westbrook.
Everybody else in the league, you can match up a trade for, and it's fair.
Except for Westbrook. Who's going to want that deal? Wait, Curry, Giannis, Luka. Yes.
That's it. Because again, if KD was on that level, he would be on the Suns already. But 34 takes him off that level. Which again, Curry's 34, but he's happy, and it's an unreal situation that again, all the teams are aspiring to, not realizing, no, 90% of championship teams win because of discourse as far as history goes, not because it's kumbaya like Golden State. And even when it is discourse, they handle it like professionals. Like I found out this year, Golden State was trying to trade Wiseman, Kuminga. They tried to get Beal over. The GM told him no. He's like, no, just trust us on this. And then Steph in an interview was saying, he's like, yeah. And so, me, Clay, and Dre, we talked about it. We brought it to their attention, said, yeah, we're keen on this. We're cool with this. And they said, no, we're not doing that. Trust me, I know what you're thinking, but this is bigger than all of that. And trust me, look at what we did with you. Look at what we did with Clay, which again leads me to the culture thing. Fix the Supermax, fix the salary cap, figure out a way to balance the two. And it all comes through revenue sharing. Figure out a way to balance the dollars across the board as far as ticket sales go and as far as the local TV deals go. Like, I think all the cities should take their TV deals, put them into one pot, disperse them evenly. The local ones. And now maybe Memphis can pay John Morant and get a free agent over.
Yeah, because those small market, that's a good point, because these small markets, they need to rely on the guy wanting to stay and doing everything right and being able to attract more people.
So I'll give you an example of a timeline. Let's say, technically, if Memphis wanted a dynasty, they had to win a championship this year. Now they're on the clock because they've gotten so close already. They've won a bunch of games already. They won games in the regular season without John Morant. Now you're in that Harrison Barnes situation if there's a Kevin Durant out there, which leads me to believe if you're Memphis, that's the team that should be packaging shit up if you're going to do it. Because you're in that window.
They can win right now.
Yeah, sign and trade Jaren Jackson, Dylan Brooks, all your picks, bring Kevin Durant over, and then see where you land and see if you can keep just a few things to get there.
And John Morant, and John Morant's one of my favorite players, so knock on wood. But I mean, he just had a knee injury. You want to take advantage of him while he's young. I don't think he's going to be Derrick Rose, obviously, but you never know.
Either way, he's getting the Supermax.
This is your window now. Yeah.
So he's getting a Supermax. Dylan Brooks is going to get paid a starter salary. One of the best defensive two guards in the league, one of the best two guards in the league, period. As a whole. He's like Drew Holiday of two guards. Literally. Jaren Jackson's got through the roof talent, pedigree, and work ethic. He's going to end up paid like a starter, and he's a stretch four. You lost Kyle Anderson from Jersey. I think he signed somewhere else. I forget where. But either way, those are the pieces you can plug out and plug in. But again, if you knew Durant was out there, I'm keeping Slow-Mo trading everything, bringing Durant over and seeing if I can keep either Brooks or Jackson. And trying to win now. Because if they don't change the Supermax in the next CBA, you now, this year and every year you don't win a championship until you pay Ja is a lost year because of the city you're in. Straight up. Like at least Miami and Golden State, when it happens, they can afford it. So it's great they have great cultures. Like they're double dipping, unlike the Lakers, the Knicks, the Bulls, and every other big market city. They just throw the money out there and hope something comes back. It's like you do. Coaching matters. You know that, right? Scouts matter, especially now.
Miami and Golden State got great coaches and great cities. So, and great
and
ownership.
Cities that require discipline, which in hindsight, you have to be more accountable of your culture. Because again, Miami doesn't win all them home games because of what's going on in the stadium.
Kyrie would fit in well with Miami, you know.
Well,
not with the culture.
No, that's my. I meant to ask you this 2 weeks ago, actually, because it came up. Kyle Lowry for Kyrie Irving.
I know.
And then they send over the first round picks. And I meant to ask you that. Who do you think's gonna win? Culture killer.
If there's one guy that can set him straight, it's Pat fucking Riley.
No, in hindsight, I don't even think Pat Riley cares if he sets him straight if that happens. I think Pat Riley just knows I can set him straight for 1 year because he cannot sit out. And then if I promise I'll co-sign his sign and trade and tell the other team, yeah, he'll be a good soldier, they'll listen to me and he'll still get a supermax and he's not my responsibility anymore. Because think about it, they don't call him the Godfather for no reason. He's going to stick that bill on somebody else.
I'll make him an offer he can't refuse. All right. Any final thoughts on player empowerment? I think we got it. Give me a closing thought.
It's gonna tie back into a salary cap conversation at some point. But at the end of the day, the problem is going to be addressed in the next CBA. Players, there will be a lockout because this is going to be really bad. Huh?
When?
Well, I think the CBA is up the year after next year or the year after that. It's either the year after next year or the year after that. But I'm guaranteeing lockout, shortened season, and the biggest argument you've ever seen as far as collective bargaining agreements go. Worse than anything baseball ever went through.
All right. Well, hopefully you're wrong, but we'll see. It'll be entertaining regardless. So, transitioning, what do you think of Draymond saying that he's watched the 98 finals and he thinks he'd beat the Bulls by a dub and the Jazz by 40?
I wholeheartedly disagree with that, and we'll go a step further and suggest that you won't see a team that's capable of beating that Bulls team until the next generation of basketball, meaning probably the tail end of where Giannis is retiring and you're looking for the next LeBron and Giannis. Because like I said, my top five by the time, or Giannis and Steph Curry will be in my top five by the time Giannis retires if neither of them gets hurt. I'm predicting that right now. To me, Giannis is the only player that has a shot at being better than Jordan right now that's alive, that hasn't like ruined or sullied his resume in a way where it's hard to come back from like LeBron. But he still has a shot at it. What if he wins 5 championships in a row? What if he does that?
Yeah.
Still got 6. He just didn't get 2 or 3 in a row.
And they're gonna have a longevity argument over like Bird and even Magic.
In the same way, like we will debate like KD and Steph. Well, anybody that thinks KD is better than Steph, if they both end up with 6 rings and one got 4 in a row and 2 spaced out, or 5 in a row and 1 spaced differently, and has just as many MVPs or more.
That's why KD's going to the Suns. He heard us talking. He's like, I got to beat Steph.
I think that would be beautiful basketball if he was over there. It'd be
Suns
beautiful.
Warriors would be amazing, but it's supposed to happen this year. But so I lost my train of thought.
Because FYI, the Nets were one of the ugliest teams I've ever seen. with Kyrie and KD without Harden the year before. When Harden was there, playing Maestro, that looked cool. But when Harden's not there, it looked worse than any pickup game.
Yeah, they had one good game against the Celtics, and they lost that at the buzzer. And after that, it was a wrap. Oh, but the 98 Bulls, to Draymond's point, you got to remember, maybe he was watching the games where Pippen was out, and Pippen had a back injury that whole finals, and Jordan had to really carry him. Okay? So I don't agree with him. But if the 98 Bulls were injured, the Warriors could beat them. That being said, the Warriors almost lost to the Rockets, and injury might have saved them. They didn't have Iggy.
That's true,
the Rockets
too.
Didn't have Paul. So Iggy's great and a great glue guy, but he's not Chris Paul. So,
but the other thing, too, is you actually reminded me that I said this one time, or I said it a bunch of times to you. I used to say the Jazz. Remember when I was like, yo, the Jazz would have had a way better chance against the Bulls if they played more like the Warriors. Because again, and this is, again, I'm going to use this argument to why the Warriors wouldn't have won. Because yes, the Jazz should have had a better chance playing like the Warriors, but at the same time, and again, this is why I don't like analytics. I'm going off of how I see how this game is about to be played. If I put Ron Harper on Clay, and then I alternate Jordan and Pippen on Curry, and then I move Rodman to the 5, and then I put Kukoc at the 4, that lineup will work just fine. I'm matching shooting for shooting, skill for skill, relatively speaking, because there's two things going on here if you compare eras. We either have to assume the Bulls would have grew up in this era. Therefore, you're not going to convince me Jordan would have shot under 33% from 3. You're not going to convince me Pippen would have shot under 32% from 3. You're not going to convince me Tony Kukoc would have been under 33 from 3. And you're not going to convince me, and then how many more is Steve Kerr taking off the bench? How many more is BJ Armstrong taking coming up in the other years?
Important sidebar here. He did say 98, but important sidebar is that
but I'm even going back to the prior team.
Jordan's first 4 rings, 91, 92, 93, 96.
I think you're about to say it.
He shot 39 to 40% from 3-point range.
Oh, you put a number to it. Yes.
39, it was like, maybe 38.8 or something, but that's 39, 40.
You didn't just say it. You proved what I was about to say, because that's where I was going. I would argue that if we're talking about these teams growing up in the same era, not only is the 98 Bulls team winning, but the first 3-peat team's winning too.
Yeah. So you think the Jazz should have sped it up because they had 3-point shooters and a distributor in Stockton.
And it would have been closer. It might have went 7. And I would have had proof that they wouldn't that the Warriors wouldn't win.
And again, here's the other problem.
I would argue that Jazz team, if they grow up playing like the Warriors, might beat the Warriors, because Shannon Anderson could light it up from 3. Brian Russell could light it up from 3. Jeff Hornacek could light it up for 3 and find it off the screens, off the dribble, and pull it quick. John Stockton never missed an open one. So again, what happens if I move Malone to the 5 and just keep alternating 5s between Antoine Carr, Karl Malone, and Greg Ostertag? What happens again?
The 96 Bulls, it's no question, because the 96 Bulls have everyone you named and Jordan in complete FU mode, and they have the better defense. They have the bigger guys. They have the better defense. You didn't have the double team Curry. You just put Pippen or Jordan or Harper on him. And Rodman acting like the Draymond Green, Draymond would get on the small guards.
Draymond ain't the defender Rodman was.
No, not quite, although he's close, but.
No, it's not even as close as people think it is. Because, Rodman was 100 times the athlete of Draymond Green.
Draymond's a better passer and leader. But Rodman's a better defender and better athlete. Yes, Rodman was a great athlete. Now,
like what Draymond does, I don't need Rodman to make those passes on that Bulls team.
Yeah.
Like, you do realize Pippen is way better at that part of Draymond than Draymond ever would be, or could be.
Oh, yeah.
Like, so that's what I mean. Like, like there can't be a team built to beat the Bulls until like I see multiple Giannis and LeBron types.
Yeah, and you could say you're going to put, and KD said, hey, all I know is that Steve Kerr put Steve Kerr in a lot of pick and rolls, which is funny. But you got help defense of Rodman, Pippen, and Jordan. Have fun.
But no, you see how but at first I told you there's two ways we can look at this to stay real. Put them in today's game. But no, let's go back the other way now. Now, what happens if they're coached by teams in the Jordan era back then? And you're not
shooting nearly as many threes.
Right. So now what happens? They're nowhere near big enough. And was Brian Williams the center on that team? I'm pretty sure he was. Remember, light-skinned Brian Williams, the lefty, that would drop 15 off the bench and we'd pull him out if he wasn't hot.
I'm not sure if he was on 98.
I remember him guarding Greg Ostertag in Game 6. Yes, he was on that team. I know he was on that team. So I was watching him. I was like,
don't disrespect the great Bill Wennington, bro.
Oh, he could shoot the lights out. Like, but Brian Williams, Bill Wennington, and Luke Longley, Phil Jackson was a genius. That's how they stopped Shaq even. It was like they even got another center. I forget who it was. That's what John Sally was on the roster for the years prior.
Just to foul Shaq.
It was to have 24 fouls a game. That's what that was for. I heard Phil say that. They were like, why do you have 4 centers? He's like, Shaq's in the league, right?
And slow down the game. Methodical. Jordan and Pippen in the half court.
Right. So you put in Wennington to bring him out when he's tired.
Yeah.
Shoot 15-footers. Let Jordan drive the lane. And then you would bring in Luke Longley, played it both ways. But Shaq was such a phenomenal athlete. They would both get tired. They come out. Brian Williams comes in, who can get 15 on any given night. Now he's making Shaq work. Then you got John Sally, and they're just hacking him.
So in the old days, the Bulls, again, the only thing I want to say 2 things. Number one is in 98, we got to remember something. Stockton was already 34, 35. Jordan was 30. I should know this. 34, 35. Again, and Pippen had a back injury. So that's the only part of where I'm like, the 17 Warriors might have had a shot against the 98 Bulls.
In
but 96,
that exact day and time.
Yeah, but 96, 97, no. Yeah. Because the other thing that's really important to mention is that I remember I watched LeBron scored 51 against the Warriors. Remember the one where J.R. Smith forgot how much time was left, and then LeBron punched his hand in the wall like Amari Stoudemire and busted his hand and didn't want to tell anybody about it, right? I remember watching that game, and I'm like, Michael Jordan in his prime in this era would do that 3 or 4 times a series in the finals. Yep. Like, do you remember what happened with the run and gun against the Phoenix Suns? He scored 41, 8, and 6 a game. It's like, do you know what he would do in this era? Like, the Warriors can shoot all the threes they want, but Jordan's going to go 25 for 38 from the field for 61 points, one game.
For how quick I heard when people brought up these 2 teams playing each other, for how quick I heard everybody say, who's going to guard this guy? Who's going to guard this guy? Who's going to guard this guy? And they're always asking about the Warriors, but they won't have the conversation the way we're having it now. So if I was on with Mad Dog and he was saying that way, and then also trying to hide the fact that Ron Harper's on the team, I would have cut him off and been like, first of all, if we're talking in this realm, everybody could do this. So when you're saying this, are you telling me Jordan shooting under 33% from 3 also? Are you telling me, no, I'm not saying that. Jordan, okay, so he's good enough now, so shut up.
Who's guarding Jordan?
Yeah, so, but say that when we go back the other way, especially. So you mean to tell me Jordan, like if you put Steph anywhere, Jordan is rocking that fadeaway from 15 feet all day on Curry. Are you crazy? And he's doing it to Clay too. Like, are you crazy? And then the second you start double teaming that, he's passing right out of it. Like, are you insane? Like, there's no way to beat that team on any realm. Like, that team is so far ahead of its time. Man. It's insane.
You had to put Gary Payton on Jordan in the 96 finals. Did a great job. Byron Russell gets maligned for the shot, but which was about 24 years ago at this point. But at the end of the day, it's like he was still a very good defender. They had very good team defense.
One of the best defenders in the league.
Yeah, and it was not a push off. He clearly got him going, and he just
contact.
gave him a little. He was just bracing himself and gave him a nice little love tap.
No, that's just natural contact. His hand was moving with the body, but it wasn't.
I debate. I'll let anything be debatable, and I'm open-minded. I am not open-minded about this. He did not push off. It was a freaking love tap.
If that hand isn't there, Byron Russell's feet are all in the exact same steps and places. Guaranteed.
Yeah. So, all right. Draymond, you wouldn't win by a dub. You'd lose by a couple because MJ would make it happen at the end of games. Plus, I'm also convinced, why did they not double team MJ at the end of some of these games? I know we passed the Kerr that one time to win the 97 finals. But in game 1 of the 97 finals and game 6 of the 98 finals, why are you not double teaming Jordan?
I think, where was he standing though?
He was at left center. My spot.
If he's
left
not
center.
Close enough in. Because if you think about it, even in the last play where Brian Russell's there.
Byron, don't disrespect him. He's been disrespected enough.
Yeah, no, that's his thing too. That's why I don't mean to do that. But the weird thing about it is, because they had Brian Russell, and it was also...
Did it again. Byron.
No. It's Brian.
It is?
Yeah. That's his thing.
My apologies.
My name's Brian. Russell. Don't call me Byron Russell.
My apologies, Brian.
He just spells it B-R-Y. So everybody says it the other way because he's black.
I stand corrected.
But... back in those days, you have to remember one thing relative to the times. Jordan got doubled coming up. And I don't know when this saying started happening, if it was in the middle of the first three-peat or right after the first three-peat, but it was, no, to beat the Bulls, let Jordan get 30. Make sure nobody else gets 20. So you would run him off the ball. You wouldn't take the ball from him, because then if you watch a lot of Jordan games, you'll notice he doesn't take a lot of shots in the first quarter unless he makes them all.
Okay. I 100% agree with what you just said. But if me and you are coaching and we're up by 1 or we're tied, and Michael Jordan comes down and there's 10 seconds left on the clock and there's 5 seconds left on the shot clock, we would instruct our team in the huddle or the time before that or whatever, hey, when there's about 5-6 seconds left on that shot clock, run a guy at him. Double team him right at that last moment. Because they did that once, and he passed it to Kerr, and Kerr hit the shot. Because Jordan saw it coming.
Hit the shot too, though.
What?
Paxson hit the shot too, though.
Paxson hit it. Paxson, that was my next point. That was when they double teamed him up on top, and he passed it to someone. I think he either passed it to Pippen to Grant, or he passed it directly to Grant, and then Grant passed it to Paxson, right?
No, but you do realize he told Paxson that was going to happen in the huddle.
Just like he told Kerr it was going to happen.
And that's why the double team didn't come.
But I'm just saying, you got to do it at the very, very end. I agree with you. But
I know what you mean.
The very end.
High school basketball, college basketball, all that stuff, I'm with you. But when you're dealing with paid professionals, the coach loses his job on that double team at this point. The coach keeps his job if you don't do it, because everybody that owns the league has that much respect for Jordan. And the rule was, don't let somebody else beat you. If Jordan makes that shot, at least have the double team come running over as fast as you can when the shot goes up, try to time it right, but you're trying to time it to the last second. But you lose your job at this point if you do that. Because remember, too, he made that pass in the double nickel game against the Knicks, and it was to Luke Longley under the basket.
I love that game. That was one of my favorite games.
Yep.
35 in the first half. I'll watch it after this.
So it's not just those playoff series is that he did that. There was signature moments throughout his career that he did that.
I partially believe that David Stern said to Jerry Stone, listen, you took the ball out of Jordan's hands last year at the end of the finals. He's going to hit this game-winning shot this time. You're not doing it again.
The other trick, too, that we take for granted, and this is the thing that people, when they try to troll Jordan, they don't acknowledge both sides, is, oh, well, you can run zones and double somebody without the ball now, so it wouldn't have been as easy for Jordan. It's but you can't sit in the lane for 3 seconds either. So the lane would have been wide open. So that doesn't matter.
You played against slightly less athletic players.
Overall, it's a moot point. But the person that says it to me, you're starting a debate with the guy where once you bring up the other side, it's like that leads me to believe he would have scored more.
Yeah, in a run and gun era, Jordan would have. In a run and gun era, Jordan. Again, do you know that? But besides the Pistons, so in his 9 years before he retired, and when he retired after that first three-peat, they all said like, "Yo, that's the best player ever." He wouldn't have won an argument because he only played 9 years, but he basically was a Jim Brown at that point because of everything he proved. He had all the accolades, won 3 in a row, but in his playoff career, he averaged 30 points on 48% shooting against the Pistons, who shut him down, and 37 points on at least 50% shooting for everyone else in a 9-year run. So you think about 37 points in that era where you had centers in the lane, where you were able to hand check, and where some of the perimeter defenders were slightly less athletic. You put it to today's era with the three-point line. And Jordan wasn't even shooting threes barely yet. He just started at the end of that, year 7, 8, 9. So yes, you're putting Jordan in today's era in the playoffs. I strongly believe he is scoring in his prime 44 points a game.
I agree.
No joke.
I agree completely. I agree.
Like that's, yeah. And so that's what we don't realize. We have to think about like I see the Warriors getting a few games, 2-3 games, especially against the 98 Bulls. But
here's the other thing too. You can't, the same reason, remember when I texted you during the Suns series and I was like, yo, I think the Suns are going to choke this away to the Mavericks because they never have the best player on the court. You're going to run into that problem with Jordan, and it's going to be exacerbated, like super exacerbated.
But if you think Steph Curry's top 5 all time, he should be able to be in the realm of MJ when MJ's older. You know what I mean?
Well, this is ultimately what I'm going to get at too, because there's somebody that in this conversation that should be higher on an all-time list. And it plays into, and again, we should have this conversation on a separate podcast because this is something that is true about every single sport. And it plays into that stat that I told you. Steph Curry's the greatest because he doesn't even have any top 75 players on his team. And it's like, well, 20 years from now, somebody might win a championship and there's not one single top 75 player on it. So with that being said, as people play, you have more players. You have more injuries that happen throughout different parts of careers. So now you could effectively have a top 75 talent list. You could have a top 75 1-year prime list. You could have a top 75 NBA resume list. And you could have my own personal list of all that shit combined. And you could set up different debates on podcasts, but call out what the rules are. And it's true for all of them. Now, with that being said, because of that, you have a ton of talented players who were never in fair positions to win rings that in hindsight, it should not be held against them. And now we have this ring bling privilege going on that now hurts them even more, like NFL receivers that haven't made it to the Hall of Fame yet. God bless Andre Reed, put him in already. Like otherwise it's going to look real bad when you do. You're going to have a lot of arguing. And it's like, no, that dude was nice. Now, with that being said, this was all a precursor for something I forgot to tell you about.
Oh boy.
I found a list of the top 5 scorers against Jordan. And the number 1 player on that list played him the most. Like 55 games.
Wait, who has scored the most points against
Average the most points against Jordan.
Against his team or against him?
Against his team. But yeah, against his team. But 2 of these guys had to guard him half the time.
Patrick Ewing?
No. So I can remember 4 of them, but I'm going to send you the list separately and we can set it up. But I just wanted to drop this in there so you remember.
All right.
So on this list, Shaq was 5th. That's all I remember. I remember who's 1, and I'll tell you the other guys I remember. You know who was 1? And Shaq only played him like 20 games, I think.
Let me think.
I'll give you 3 guesses. I can't wait to tell you because you're gonna love it. You're gonna love it.
Jordan.
If you don't guess it, you're going to think you should have too.
Larry Bird.
Nope.
Dominique Wilkins.
Yes.
Yes.
55 games at 30 points a game.
Really?
Iverson was number 2 at 29.
Who was number 2?
No, Iverson. And he's the only guy under 6'6" on the list.
Oh, so it's not total points, it's points per game.
Yeah.
Oh.
I think
Bird wasn't higher.
I think he played him 11 times. And then Kobe, I think, was 4th. And I forget who was 3rd. I have to go back through it, but
I know Bird used to have monster games against Jordan, but he probably had a lot of assists too. So.
Yeah. This was just points per game.
Nice. All right.
Yeah, Dominique, 30 a game, 55 times.
And that was really that was my second guess because I was thinking total points. That's why I said Ewing. Because I was thinking
that's another conversation we need to have. We need to start that trend to get total points more accounted for.
Yeah, we'll do that. But but yeah, I think that covers it for tonight, bro. Thanks for coming on. Great conversation. And
always
I'll be back on the show soon.